I have a complicated relationship with Mumbai's local trains. One particular night, I experienced an unsettling encounter that left me with a lot of questions. It was late, around 1:30 a.m., and I was on one of the last trains heading home. The day had dragged on longer than expected, and an unexpected work emergency kept me from leaving the office until the early hours. The train had been packed until Thane, but as we progressed further from the city, the carriages emptied out. By the time we were past Kalyan, my coach was nearly deserted. The night outside was pitch dark as the train sped through the rural countryside. The only illumination came from the train's lights and from the lights inside the coach. I was alone, or so I thought. My own train of thoughts was abruptly interrupted when I noticed an elderly man seated just behind me. He appeared to be in his 70s, and his presence was creepy. The trains in Mumbai don't have vestibule coaches, so there was no possible way for him to have entered from another coach. I had been the only passenger in the coach just moments before. The old man's face was etched with an angry expression, his eyes fixed on me with a chilling intensity. A wave of unease washed over me. I had never felt such an overwhelming sense of discomfort. With a sense of dread, I watched as the man slowly rose from his seat and walked towards me. I tried to look away, but the sight of him approaching was impossible to ignore. He walked past my seat, his angry eyes never leaving me. As he reached the door of the coach, he paused for a moment and turned back to give me one last menacing look. Without warning, he leapt out of the train. I was paralyzed with shock. I was unable to comprehend what I had just witnessed. The train continued to hurtle forward as I stumbled to the door to see nothing but darkness outside. The encounter had left me shaken. I tried to steady myself, but my nerves were unnerved. I almost lost my balance and could have easily fallen out of the train if I hadn't managed to grab hold of a nearby handle. When the train finally stopped at the next station, I hastily moved to a coach that had a few other passengers. Their presence was a welcome reprieve from the isolation of the earlier coach. I reached home in a state of distress, unable to shake the disturbing image of the old man from my mind. The next day, I took a break from work and was consumed by a need to understand what I had experienced. My search on the internet revealed that I was not alone in my encounter. Many people had reported similar sightings, ghostly figures appearing on trains and buses only to vanish into the night. The possibility that the old man's spirit had met a tragic end, perhaps having fallen onto the tracks or been run over by a train, seemed all too real. The unsettling encounter left a lasting mark on me. The ordinary act of riding a train became forever tainted by the presence of the midnight passenger. The experience served as a stark reminder that the difference between the living and the dead can be disturbingly thin. My work as a forest officer took me to a remote village in rural Assam, nestled in the dense forests of northeastern India. My office was situated half an hour away from the village, and I relied on my bike for the daily commute. The forest was my domain, and though it was beautiful, it could also be unnervingly quiet and dark. One night, an unexpected work related emergency kept me at the office until the early hours of the morning. It was around 3 a.m. when I finally mounted my bike and began the ride back to the village where I had rented a small house. The cold air sliced against my face, and the dense forest, devoid of any streetlights, seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. The only illumination came from the headlight of my bike, cutting a narrow path through the darkness. As I navigated the winding road through the forest, I suddenly spotted a figure standing on the side of the road. It was a woman, her head covered with a jute bag. She stood motionless, as if waiting for someone. The village was still a good 15-20 minutes away, with nothing but forest in between. Concerned for her safety, I stopped my bike to see if she needed help. As I approached, she abruptly turned around and fled into the forest. I was taken aback and decided to follow, but despite my best efforts, she vanished into the darkness as though she had never been there. Feeling uneasy, I returned to my bike and resumed my ride. Just a few minutes later, I was horrified to see the same woman standing by the side of the road again. This time, fear gripped me and I didn't stop my bike. I accelerated, desperate to put as much distance between us as possible. But as I passed her, a chilling voice called out my name from behind. It was a creepy, distorted tone that seemed to echo through the forest. My heart raced and I dared not look back. I pushed the throttle, speeding up as much as I could. As I approached a sharp curve in the road, my worst fears materialized. The woman was standing right in the middle of the road, blocking my path. The sight made my blood run cold. The road was slick with rain, and my bike skidded dangerously as I tried to maneuver around her. The bike almost slipped, but I managed to regain control and navigate past her. With a racing heart, I finally reached my rented house. The encounter haunted me throughout the night. I lay awake, unable to shake the image of the woman from my mind. I questioned the locals about any woman who might be wandering in the forest at such hours, but no one knew anything about her. Since that night, I have taken a different approach to my late night work. Rather than risking another eerie encounter in the forest, I now stay at my office whenever I have to work late. The forest, with all its secrets and shadows, remains a place where the unknown lurks just beyond the reach of the night.